Welcome to the AI Business News Desk. Terry Sweeney here, contributing editor to AI Business, and joining me now is Jennifer Gold, CISO with Risk Aperture. Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us here on the news desk today.
Thank you, Terry, for having me. I appreciate it. Happy to be
We
here.
are talking about a pretty critical topic with it's rethinking security models for autonomous AI. Implied in that is agentic AI, which is super timely. So really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Um, Identity management, just as a general topic, has been a sore spot for security professionals for
Yes,
at least the last 5 years. I mean, this is
absolutely.
really where the keys of the kingdom are stored for most organizations. Start us off with some context around why autonomous AI, things like AI agents, really start to break the traditional security models that we've used.
Absolutely. So, if we think about all of the benefits, and challenges generative AI has offered to us, we're now taking it to a level of execution and decision making. So, the real differentiator with agentic AI is that we're creating a model that is unpredictable in a lot of ways, that we still don't fully understand, that we have not come up with the ways to fully govern, and we're granting it access in many cases to areas that should be, in any other circumstance from a data perspective would be restricted. So you have a tool that you're granting decision making and you're taking the human out of the loop when you're deploying agentic AI, and it can take actions and
Right,
execute.
right.
So it just takes the model to a different level. And knowing some of the challenges we've had around AI and unpredictable behaviors, hallucinations, just all these different challenges, we know that there's a lot more work to be done.
Of course.
And so, and I'm a huge advocate of innovation and building innovative models, but also doing it responsibly and thinking about what guardrails we need.
Yeah, but as a working CISO, you also have to be safeguarding the data integrity and
Yes,
the institutional integrity of your organization.
absolutely.
What's your confidence level with the current level of guardrails on AI agents these days?
So I think one of the things conceptually around security, and as you said, I am an identity access management, authentication, and authorization. They have been enormous challenges, I think, for the industry as a whole. And we saw a tremendous shift, like even when we went to cloud computing, with struggling to figure out how to manage all of that, right? How do we manage that for our workloads? How do we manage it across the board? And so now we're introducing something that has another layer to it that we're not really talking about. And I'll refer to it more as like a behavioral layer. So think about it in terms of the cognitive security layer.
Mm,
And I think this is something we're not really talking about enough in terms of cognitive security. So when I talk cognitive security, I'm thinking more behavioral, right? And those are the things that we're seeing that are impacting humans, like the phishing that is so good that
right,
we're
right.
unable to detect, right? Because of the level of manipulation and the ways generative AI has democratized cybercrime. But from the agentic AI perspective, we can look at that almost as another, it's like a non, think about the non human entity, an identity that exists, and the behaviors it has. So if you take a typical agent and think about a typical agent, it's designed to be helpful. And the goal is to be helpful, to create efficiency, to perform certain tasks.
Right.
But it hasn't been trained in adversarial behavior, and it can be manipulated.
Sure.
And it can be manipulated with text. So there's this other layer of linguistics and behaviors that we need to incorporate into our security models and fully understand that better.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Do you imagine there will be frameworks and I guess industry agreements? It's not a great analogy, but say like the shift from HTTP to HTTPS.
Yeah.
This is what we all do now because we know this is a greater level of security. Uh, there must be things that are in the works that are going to formulate the sort of the security shell that's around these agentic AI bots, right?
Yeah.
That's my guess, but you're on the
Yeah.
front lines.
Yeah, and what's like very encouraging and super interesting to me. So out of NIST, There is a human behavior and cybersecurity group that formed, and out of that came something called the Cognitive Security Institute. And they came up with a cognitive security attack taxonomy. And it's incredible. And this is a great group doing some really progressive work, but this is exactly what they're focused on.
Okay.
And they're looking at how to take that and incorporate it into the NIST AI RMF standards and how we bridge those together. And then we also see certainly like OWASP in the top 10 addressing some of the threats they're seeing, bringing that to the surface and sharing that throughout the security community. And then MIT has done a very, very interesting project around AI risk. So they have an entire database, and it's this living, growing model. But they're capturing a lot of the behaviors, and they're looking across agentic AI and the various models to start to really bridge out what the risks are. And I think those are a few areas that are really interesting. And of course, in the EU, they're also doing some really progressive work on governance that I imagine will eventually start to see some of that adoption here in the more highly regulated sectors.
Right. So do you imagine something like cognitive security will be the complement to agentic AI and form that piece within the IAM sphere?
Yeah, I do. And in a way, I feel like we're going to shift our perception of security. Like, if we consider cybersecurity, and people talk a lot about convergence of cyber and physical, and how we need to bridge the two together culturally and also from, a lexicon standpoint, from a taxonomy standpoint. But cognitive security would be kind of the other piece of it. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is risk. We have these various components that create business risk. So if we look at it in that context and we think about what is creating risk for our business, what are the crown jewels for our business, and focus on some of those outcomes from that leadership level and how we govern our business and protect the data that's most important. And I think as we build these models, we need to do more research to understand them, and we just need to contain things. So with agentic AI, we're not just creating an identity that we're containing, one fixed sort of static aspect to the controls. There are so many layers to it
Sure.
that we need to look at along the whole workflow and how we're securing it along the whole chain. And I also think it's incredibly important that we consider data provenance, and we have gates at the input level. And then we also have a gate that lives at the output level, and that we're looking for any shifts and changes and figuring out what that monitoring looks like. And I do see a lot of companies are really progressive in doing the work, and the community is coming together to figure this out. So that's the exciting part,
Sure.
is the development of it.
The frameworks, the industry and government agreements are great steps forward.
Yeah.
At some point, though, do you imagine laws and regulations will start to creep in to really address, I guess, keep accountable, but also give some enforcement leverage where needed?
Absolutely. And we do know that, compliance drives so many changes, right? And regulation. And we do need policy that advocates for responsible usage. And I anticipate healthcare sector, financial sector, the more, and the defense industrial
Okay.
base, starting to regulate more of that framework and drive regulation. Because right now we're just, it's kind of the horse out of the gate,
Sure.
as we do, right? We bring technology into the world. It's the new gold rush, and and then we tend to, after the fact, start to try to govern that. But I do see a lot of conversations happening, and that being the forward path, more regulation.
This feels like we're putting the outer layer on the rocket as it's leaving the launch pad.
We
It's
are,
it's got
yeah,
that kind of speed and that kind of velocity.
it does. But the implications around around a tool that makes decisions within your organization requires a lot of thought and governance.
Yeah. Well, this is just, I'm sure we could talk for another 30 minutes here about this
Thank
topic,
you.
but thank you so much for
Thank you so
sharing some
much.
thoughts around how we
you.
secure autonomous AI.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it,
much.
Jennifer.
I
Thank you
really
very much.
appreciate it. Thank you.
We've been talking with Jennifer Gold of Risk Aperture. This has been Terry Sweeney for the AI Business News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.